Hi, I'm Tavis Piatoli, co-founder and director of sports nutrition education for My Sports Dietitian. And I'd like to welcome you to part one of our 16-part series on sports nutrition for the wrestler. In part one, we're going to talk about how sports nutrition is your secret weapon to achieving optimal performance. Just a little bit of background in this first part about myself and what I've done over the last 15 years working in the field of sports nutrition. Previously, I spent 8 years with the New Orleans Saints from 2006 to 2013, serving as their sports dietitian, in addition to working with the New Orleans Pelicans and also with Tulane University Athletics from 2002 to 2016. Currently, I work in several different roles as a sports dietitian, working primarily with My Sports Dietitian, as well as serving on the committee for the Sports Medicine Advisory Board for the Louisiana High School Athletic Association, as well as a nutrition consultant for Tulane Institute of Sports Medicine, Fairchild Sports Performance, and a variety of high school programs. In addition, I serve as the Education Program Manager for the Taylor Hooten Foundation, where I have the opportunity to educate high schools, colleges, teachers, coaches, and parents about the dangers of performance-enhancing drugs. Before we really get into the core of this component, I'd like to kind of share with you a little bit about what really happens in sports today, particularly at the high school level, but also at the collegiate level as well. We're seeing really a transition for teams investing in ways to get better at performance, bigger weight rooms, bigger strength and conditioning programs, high schools hiring full-time strength coaches to design a strength and conditioning program for their school. In addition, we're seeing more high schools employ full-time athletic trainers and expanding their sports medicine facilities. In addition to expanded strength and conditioning programs, as well as sports medicine programs, we're seeing a lot of things from equipment to facilities all getting upgraded. When I look at this graphic, you look at the elephant and he wants to know, well, why when I'm in a room people ignore me, regardless of the size and the impact he probably can make? The question we have to ask is sports nutrition the elephant in the room? This is the missing link to athletic performance that we don't typically think about. Good eating habits can make a good athlete great. So we might have an athlete that does really well, performs well, but just by changing their diet and improving their diet, they can perform at a much higher level. We can also reverse that, where an athlete might be really, really good or great, and what they eat prior to an event or leading up to a season could increase the outcome of them not performing at the level of expectation. We do know you invest a lot of money, whether as coaches, athletic trainers, as parents. We invest a lot of time and money on equipment and uniforms. You put a lot of time teaching practice drills and technique. We study our opponent to know the things that they're going to do or maybe not do during a match. Investing in strength and conditioning programs during the season as well as in the off season. But the question we want to know is, how much time do you invest in eating well or planning to eat well or teaching your athletes to eat well? Because we feel this is really a critical component. Sports nutrition, as we've seen in the science, has been proven to reduce body fat, increase lean muscle, improve muscle recovery, can also reduce the risk of illness, and also increase energy levels. We've spent some time in the past evaluating the eating habits of high school athletes to, number one, see what their perception of their eating habits are versus what their actual eating habits would be graded if we had to rate them based on what they ate, but also how often they ate. Really, the perception is today, especially at the high school level, and it's not that much different at the collegiate level, but these kids think they're eating really well. When we asked 256 kids to give themselves a grade, A, B, C, D, or F, 86% of these kids gave themselves a B. So they gave themselves a really good score, indicating that they think they eat well. When we gave them 13 questions to review to see what they're doing, to evaluate what they ate, how much they ate, when they ate, basically if we would have given them a grade, we would have rated them about 65% based on the algorithm we've created. So 86% of these high school athletes thought they ate well, but they really didn't when we looked at what they had. So let's talk about what are some key components on how nutrition really acts as a secret weapon. How does it impact athletic performance? Number one, and I think this is probably one of the most important, is It reduces the risk for injury by managing and reducing inflammation, improving bone strength, and also facilitating the healing process. So these are all critical components when it comes to the recovery process that helps with performance. We do this by, number one, getting adequate calories that we need for bone strength, and we need to help reduce the risk for stress fractures. Athletes that are constantly competing, if they don't get enough calories to support the amount of energy, they put more stress on the bone, they put more stress on the body, and they don't recover that fast. Fruits and vegetables are critical for several different reasons. They're very versatile. And a lot of times we tend to substitute more processed foods instead of eating enough fruits and vegetables. So these are foods that help boost the immune system, which is important, especially during a long wrestling season. Reduce inflammation, so helps improve muscle soreness or reduce muscle soreness, any type of swelling that's done after, or any type of soreness after an intense training session, and also speed the healing process. So if there are any minor injuries or even some major injuries, good quality diet helps facilitate that process. And finally, nutrient timing for muscle recovery, and we're going to go into more specifics about that in the next slide. Also, providing fuel for the body to help that body work harder and longer. We do know with wrestling, this is a very energy demanding sport. You put a lot of time in the training room or at practice, but also when we get to match time, it's really critical to have enough fuel. It's not uncommon for a wrestler to really restrict calories when they're trying to make weight. So it is extremely important to eat every 3 to 4 hours for sustained energy. That way they don't go long without eating. That can cause eventually maybe low blood sugar. We'll go into specifics in other different nutrition segments we have coming up. But really the first rule I try to encourage all wrestlers is to really try to eat frequently. Have small meals throughout the day for sustained energy. Carbohydrate should be the primary source of fuel. There is no other better way to fuel the body without good quality carbohydrates. And we have a section on carbohydrates where we will indicate here are your top elite level carbohydrates, and these are things that we want to minimize in the diet and stay away from as much as possible. And of course, adequate hydration. The first sign of fatigue is typically due to dehydration, and we know when wrestlers are trying to cut weight or watch their weight, it's very, very important to make sure that we get enough hydration in our body, enough fluids to where we don't fatigue too quickly on the mat. And that can be something that can be critical if we don't get enough fluids. And we'll talk about some strategies for cutting in an upcoming presentation as well. And our final slide on this section really just talks about what are some other strategies on how nutrition impacts athletic performance. Number one, it optimizes performance on and off the wrestling mat. So we need adequate fuel. Without adequate fuel, we're not going to perform well on the mat, and we're not going to have sustained energy. I've seen it with a lot of the wrestlers I've worked with over the last 15 years, and in the fact that they're cutting throughout the week, they're limiting their calories throughout the week, they're restricting calories, and on Saturday or the time of the meet, they're so underfueled they can't catch up, and their gas tank's pretty empty. So it's important to eat well. And, as we talked about in the previous slide, trying to eat every 3 to 4 hours to keep blood sugar stable, but to have sustained energy. I think where this is really the most important is it helps athletes reach off-season body weight goals. One of the worst things a wrestler can do is to go into the season, 10, 15 pounds above their wrestling weight, because then they're going to have to employ some strategies that are not typically safe. I don't recommend, restricting calories too low to where, number one, it causes muscle loss, strength loss, but also could cause some major problems from especially the energy side of things. So if we get pretty close to our body weight and performance weight by the start of the season, we'll have a lot better energy to where we're not restricting calories. And of course, sustained energy from multiple matches, wrestling tournaments where you might wrestle anywhere from 3 to 6 times in a day to where you need to have sustained energy. Although those sessions, those wrestling matches aren't very long in duration, they still take a lot of energy out of the body and tax the body due to the anaerobic nature of that energy system. And finally, it speeds recovery after training. Part one is really refills gas tank. So we need carbs to refill the gas tank after a 2 or 3 hour practice where we're basically completely utilizing carb for energy. So we need carbs and good quality carbs as fuel. When we get to our section on carbs, we'll talk about the specifics on what are the best carbs for recovery and sustained energy. Second is it rebuilds broken down muscle tissue. So after a workout, our muscles have been utilized, they've been broken down, they're torn down. We need protein. We don't need excessive amounts of protein. 20 or 30 grams is what the science has shown us to be really the ideal dosage that'll help rebuild and repair the tissue after it's been damaged. And we can get that in liquid form or solid form. And of course, we still want to balance out and eat adequate protein throughout the day. And then finally, hydration. We sweat a lot. We lose a lot of fluid during a training session. We want to make sure we get enough fluid. So usually for every pound of fluid loss, we want to try to get at least 2 cups of fluid inside the body. Obviously, if we're cutting, we'll talk about some other effective and safe strategies to do that, but also get some electrolytes from what we lose in the sweat. And finally, if you have questions and you'd like to contact me personally to ask any questions about this specific topic, you can email me at tpiatoli@mysportsd.com. Topic 2, I will be discussing how to really create a nutrition plan for success. What can athletes do, as well as coaches and anyone involved with the development of that athlete do to really help him or her develop a plan for success. And finally, be sure to check us out at www.mywrestlingnutrition.com. You'll see a great ebook by sports dietitian Clint Wattenberg, who was also a Division I All-American wrestler, as well as checking our website out at www.mysportsdconnect.com, where they have a lot of great other information and free information on podcast and other nutrition education that we provide for you guys. Thanks a lot for listening to part 1. We'll see you in part 2.